compensating potential is too seductive to ignore. What nature has wrought in that indifferent, unforgiving manner of hers, man wishes to undo and to correct. The masculine order. The masculine order drive towards domination, the desire to dominate, the feminine, is evident here. When we speak of technological compensation, we do not only mean gadgetry and machinery, but established techniques, methods, recipes, conventional knowledge. A cyborg can become a zombie with mechanical support. The organic part of the hybrid man-machine has totally given itself over to automated processes, acting only as the missing will, directing the contraption towards a desirable goal. A goal made desirable by the inherent logic of the machinery itself. When this organic part only acts as a directing need, which the machinery supports, then the human element is reduced to this need requiring satisfaction. It becomes a servicing agent, finding purpose and meaning in servicing the machinery that compensates for its natural deficiencies by following prescribed techniques. The term human distinguishes an individual organism along the lines of sexual reproduction. There is no human without sex. There is no species identity without sex. If this part is eliminated along with the subcategories of male-female, which make it possible, then the label human loses all meaning. The system, the machinery, must provide an alternate identifier so as to not drive the organism mad. When the individual separates from his or her biological identity, merging with an artifice provided to him or her by the institution which is itself a form of machinery, part of the machinery, then some new identifier is urgently needed. At this point, we cannot even use the personal pronouns of him, her, because sexual identifiers no longer apply to the construct. We know this is true because in our modern Western world, there is an ongoing process of redefinitions. Male man must become letter carrier, and fireman must become firefighter. Techniques, the sum total being what we call memes, evolve faster than genes, making psychology a reaction to the man-made, still rooted in primal environmental conditioning. This rearrangement of self-identity is accompanied by the risk of internal fragmentation, schisms of the psyche. The individual, this it, offers itself as part of the machinery so as to attain from it the reward of being serviced by other parts of the machinery, a community of its. The individual it gains the ability to reinvent itself continuously by simply purchasing and incorporating into its hybrid cybernetic unity new gadgetry. Gadgets become its new clothing, its outer appearance. It purchases this gadgetry, these techniques and technologies, by making of itself a servicing mechanism for the institution, which then offers it the means of purchasing any gadget it so desires. The gadgetry is purchased from the institutions which are serviced and then provide the means. The process is circular, imitating natural cycles. We must keep in mind that when we speak of techniques and technologies, we mean everything man invents to compensate in relation to nature, clothing, knowledge, marriage, and so on. Gadgetry is simply the material manifestation of this process, the physical application. Feminism is a byproduct of this technological influx, separating man from nature by merging him with techniques and technologies. The contraceptive pill eliminates female sexual costs and the care and responsibility this forces upon her choices. The institutions of law and order, now a faceless masculine abstraction that can be represented by anyone with the appropriate prerequisites, replaces a female's dependence on others, particularly biological males, freeing her from care when and if she offers of herself, of her time, in the service of the machinery which provides her with this care. The mechanics takes over the caring, allowing the individual it to simply service and be of service. The MRA, the men's rights activists, are wanting to jump on the bandwagon so as to not be left behind in this race towards utopian progress, also embrace this technological technique fetish. They dream of a coming future world where they will no longer need a biological female or any corporeal organism really, because a machine and a simple technique, a procedure, can replicate them and can fulfill any biological need they may have. Most are already encased in technological alternate realities, living vicariously through artificial means. Nerds and geeks are terms referring to these individuals living within artifices totally dependent on techniques and technologies. They will eventually be able to clone themselves with a small DNA sample, but if they wish to remain more traditional, they can also find a consenting other, either a biological male or female. At this point, it does not really matter, to provide a DNA sample so as to splice the two samples to produce a new individual. The sexual act is eliminated as a requirement. It may remain for a period of time as a primitive remnant of a lingering past, soon to be forgotten. Again, if this future brave new world comes about, as these activist feminists and these MRAs hope, then we can no longer speak of male or female, nor can we speak of a human race. The identifiers would have become obsolete the moment machinery, techniques, and technologies take over to compensate and deal with a biological deficiency, producing a need. We may fast forward the process and imagine an overcoming of this biological deficiency, this existential need, as the term biology would now be merged in a new hybrid form, with no existential anxieties and no moral essence. The need would be gone, replaced by endless replication of techniques and technologies, directed by an established programming. The concept of nature as the sum of all past nurturing, along with history, will at this point have merged under the heading programming. Programming can be more easily centralized, especially when the techniques and the technologies require sophisticated knowledge and special materials. The specialists and the specialized enhanced materials would be controlled and circulated in accordance with a desirable outcome. Feminists and the MRA agree in their dissatisfaction with nature and their passionate dislike of paternalism, because paternalism is based on naturally produced biological hierarchies. In their coming utopia, the paternalism aspect of coexistence will be taken over by techniques and technologies. The pater replaced by a machine, making masculinity obsolete because all are equally dependent on the machinery and the rules, the programming it functions by, making all equally female in essence, or infantile underneath its authority. Male anxiety concerning his replacement by machinery is expressed in popular movie themes, such as Terminator, The Matrix, or in the Star Trek universe by the Borg. For the nerds, geeks, and females, this is a blessing because it reduces the effects of natural selection, equalizing all in technological compensation, requiring only servitude to access. The uniformity presented in these movie world futuristic utopias or dystopias is disregarded. the communist element is ignored. In the minds of these anti-nature conformists, the choice of gadgetry of outer appearance or artificial limbs, prosthetic organs, enhancing techniques and technologies is considered an expression of individuality and free will, like selecting a clothing article to represent your uniqueness. Natural selection has given way to consumer selection, and evolution has been replaced by supply and demand, where wants can be manufactured just as quickly as the techniques and technologies to satisfy them. Transhumanism is the socio-political end product of secular humanism. At its core, it is spurred on by a distaste for nature and natural processes, including sex and sexuality. It disregards human nature because nature is to be replaced, and the term human is to be made inapplicable. The Zeitgeist movement is another expression of this secular, humanistic, transhuman communism, where the redistribution of resources offers a correction to the more primal capitalism and its pooling of resources. The Judeo-Christian moral imperative has been replaced by technique and technology, but the promise of a pain-free, suffering-free, sharing in Earth's bounty utopianism remains the same. Paradise has been brought down to earth and projected as an imminent future. God has become technique and technology, or it has been abstracted into the concept of a state through which techniques and technologies, in other words, the grace of God, of the divine, are accessed. Love is now communication, the internet connectivity of cyber realities. I've tried to connect in this section not only the MRA and feminism and their shared distaste for reality, for the world, and their total dependence on technology and techniques to compensate for genetic failings, genetic insecurities, so as to create an equalizing coming world. But I've also tried to connect both the feminism and the MRA back to its roots, so trying to trace back the ideologies, the ideas, back to their source, which is doesn't only pass through communism, transhumanism, communism, secular humanism, but goes even further back to Christianity and Judaism. The cult of the nihilistic cults of victimization, self-victimhood, those that eternally associate themselves with the victims of nature and driving them to compensate, to correct this. You will notice in these mimetic devices not only the methods used, which are noetic, that is, they try not to change themselves in relation to the world, to adapt themselves in relation to the world, to genetically alter themselves so as to become stronger, smarter, more fit, but their attempt to change the world in relation to themselves. This is what nihilism is. It starts from an opposite direction. It doesn't begin with the self, but it begins with the world. The world becomes the negative, which must be adapted to the self. It's not that the self has to build itself, its constitution, its drives, its control, but the world has to adapt to the self, or the perception of the world. And this is why in nihilistic means the world is a problem. It represents a problem which must be distanced, must be reinterpreted rejected, denied, forgotten, reinterpreted. This is why nihilism heavily depends on techniques and technologies which cocoon, shelter the individual, protect them from reality, because reality is the problem. The world is the problem which must be escaped, forgotten, replaced, ignored, so as to create an artificial world within which the individual feels that he's more self-determining, that he has more free will, which is of course an illusion. It's funny that the very people that propose ideas that eliminate sex are the very ones that cling on to these identifiers, or that make the term humanity obsolete, are the ones who cling on to it, trying to redefine it so as to maintain it as an idea which is so abstracted that has no reference to anything outside the human brain. And it's the same people that cling on to the ideal of individuality who are the ones that are proposing a uniforming future coming world, and mechanics and mechanisms which produce uniformity. That's why they have to make appearances into something superficial, because for them individuality now becomes something superficial. Some of them dispense with these mind games, and they go straight for for a uniformity which denies that there is such a thing as self, that we're all a singularity, a oneness, and that our individuation is an illusion. This is the epitome of nihilism, the rejection of the apparent so as to cling on to an abstraction, the noetic, a rejection of the phenomenon so as to replace it with a noumenon, which has no reference except back to a human abstraction.